Welcome to ArcGIS API for JavaScript customizing widgets. I'm with my colleague Matt Driscoll. I'm JC Franco. We're both in the JavaScript API team. We work with widgets, developing UX, UI. And with that, I'll get started. So for our agenda, just like a disclaimer, we have a widget Stranger Things theme going on, so be prepared. There are some references, so I hope they're not all lost. In terms of what we'll be covering today, we'll be seeing some of the different options that you have available when it comes to customizing the API widgets. We'll also be covering some different techniques you can use to customize and make your widgets and themes kind of fit better. And then we'll close up with some Q&A. So we'll start off by talking about some of the different ways that you can customize widgets right now in the JavaScript API. And the first off is theming. All of our widgets have some CSS applied to them. So by changing the styles, meaning colors, size of font, size of the different containers, you can tweak the look for what you're going for. Another option that you have is, since our widgets are split into view models, which separate all the view business logic from the actual UI, which are the views, you have the options to either create a new view or take the code of an existing view from the source code that we provide and kind of recreate it on your own, or bring it into a separate third-party library of UI of your choice. And you also have an option to extend an existing widget if you want to either override existing behavior or kind of add some custom behavior. For our widgets purposes, we'll be covering 3. So we'll be showing you how to work with themes, also how to create your own custom theme. We'll be showing you how to recreate an existing view, taking the source code of one of our existing widgets as a sample. And finally, we'll show you how to take an existing widget and be able to just simply extend it and give it your own custom look and feel. So if you're brave enough, are you ready to continue? Matt, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Let's do it.
Ready too? With that, I'll hand it off to Matt.
Thank you, Franco. All right, so Act 1. Oops, let me turn this over. Act 1, we're going to be talking about theming. And so why would you theme and create a custom theme with the API? Well, you may have, your company may have specific branding that you want to match, or you may have a map that's sort of like a darker map and you may want to match that with the theme. Maybe the contrast isn't right and you want to change the theme a little bit to match that. Or maybe you have user-specific requirements where users need bigger buttons. So that would be another reason to create a custom theme. Out of the box, Esri, we provide 10 themes. And using a theme only requires changing the theme name here. So when you're linking the Esri style sheet in your application, you would just switch out the different theme styles. So let's look at some of those out-of-the-box themes. So here I have a pretty basic web scene, and I have some widgets on the scene as well. I have the base map gallery, I have some buttons up here, the search widget, and a color picker. And by default, we have our light theme. This is what's showing currently. And what I have here is a simple select list that when I change it, it's going to swap out the style sheet for the other theme. So here's our widgets in the dark theme, light blue, light green, dark purple, etc. So this may be all you need if you just want your map to have a dark theme. It may just be simply switching that. Let's talk about our theming technology. So our themes are written using Sass. We use Node and NPM to handle our packages. And we use Grunt.js as a task manager. Sass is a powerful scripting language, otherwise known as a CSS preprocessor. So you can write your code in Sass, and then it will compile into CSS. And we do that because it's more modular. We get things like variables and mix-ins. So we're not having to rewrite code all over the place. It's the same code. So it's dry. You're not repeating yourself all over your application. And basically, it just makes it a lot easier. So the steps for creating a theme. First one, you're going to want to get our theming utility. Then you're going to use that utility, and it's going to provide you with a theme that you can customize. And then once you're done customizing that theme, it'll spit out a compiled version of that, and you just copy that onto your web server and link it to your application. So setting up the theme, I'll point out this URL again at the end. But you're going to go to this JS API styles GitHub page. You're going to clone it. You're going to run npm install. You're going to edit the theme file in the Sass directory. And then as you're doing that, it's going to give you some preview page, and you'll be able to see what's happening. And it's going to compile into the dist folder with your compiled theme. And that's what you'll take and put on your web server. So step one, this is where you would go to get this theming utility. And you just git clone and get this and download it. Then you call npm install. And this is going to get all the prerequisites that are needed to use this theme utility. It's going to create a directory. It's going to compile CSS from Sass. And it's going to spin up a preview page in your browser. That's going to help you be able to see what you're doing. Step three, you're going to edit that theme in the main Sass file. And then optionally, you can edit that preview app if you want to tweak it to where you're seeing more stuff. Or you could just link your application to the output of the theme file, and so you can see how the theme's looking. And step four, you just link it to your app basically, and then you're done. So our goals is we want to theme smart, and that means avoid adding additional CSS selectors and use Sass to our advantage as much as possible. Our theme is structured by color, size, and type, and these all correspond to files with the same name, so that's pretty nice and handy. Our theme structure, by default, we have all of these variables declared with default values. So, for example, if you like the light style theme, but you want to just overwrite a particular variable, you can easily do that just by setting like the background color here below just to overwrite that specific color. So this means you don't have to fill out every single variable for the theme file. All the defaults will fall back basically. But wait, there's more. We have these four main color variables. If you set this, you'll get probably 99% of the way there, because we have some magic that happens when you set these core ones. And the magic I mean basically is we set up more defaults based upon these variables that you set. So if I set the button color variable, it's going to automatically determine the hover variable by darkening the button color by 10%. So it's kind of nice because if you just want to see something really quick and you're okay with some of these darkened or lightened defaults, it's really good. But you still have the option to overwrite these and specify a hover color if you want to. Let's look at the API styling guide real quick. If I go to the JavaScript API and I go to the guide page and I go to the styling section of that, you can see where all the default themes are listed. You can see how you can use Sass, and there's more information on some of the variables and creating sassy widgets. So just wanted to point that out. All right, so let's make a theme. And since we have this Stranger Things theme going, we're going to create one that's like that. Short disclaimer, this may not look great on the projector because it's a pretty dark theme. So just want to point that out too. So what I did here is first I created a vector tile layer, and I wanted to base the coloring on this image right here, the Stranger Things background. So I created that. And then I went to the Stranger Things wiki page, and they have all these filming locations And so I created a feature layer and put those in there. And so they have all the locations where areas have been filmed, and some of them have like images and notes and stuff like that. And then I have a web map with a bunch of widgets on it. And the way I determined to create this coloring theme was I just searched for a Stranger Things color palette, and what do you know, there's one on Color Hex. So I just took that and, well, okay, sounds good. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this theme and make it a dark theme and have it look like this. So it's demo time. Let's go ahead and do that. So if I'm looking at the checked out JavaScript styles repo, I can see that there's a dist folder, and this is where all the CSS is going to be output. I have a preview HTML page. This basically just sets up a map view, and a search widget, and then searches for location, so the pop-up will show. The SAS folder here, this is where you would make all your changes. By default, there's a folder called My Theme, and this is what it looks like. It's just ready for you to start writing your custom theme in, and that's where we'll be doing most of the work. So if I go into my steps here, the first thing I want to do is I want to edit the app page to add a few more widgets so we can kind of see the theme a little better. So I'm going to go into where this app was, and I'm just going to replace that. And so our default theme preview looks like this. It just has a search widget and the pop-up. I'm going to reload that, and you'll see I have a few more buttons here. And yeah, there's a legend widget and a layer list. But I still have this kind of white theme. So what I want to do is I want to modify that theme. So the first thing I'm going to do is just copy this little bit of code here and replace it. So I'm still importing the base core Sass here, but I'm going to set the font color to be this blue. And if I switch back over here, you'll see that it automatically changed for me. Now it's a blue color right here. I can comment some other stuff, and I can set the font color to this red, and the button color to this red. And so now I get this nice red color here. And then lastly, I want to set the background color to be this darker, almost black color. And boom. So that got me probably 90% there. What else I want to do is I want to change the font to match the Stranger Things font. And so I can import that. And that's just going to import this Benquiot font and set it as a font family variable. Switch back over here, and I notice that the font looks a little different now. But to me, it's a little bit small. So I want to make it a bit bigger. So we set the line height to be a little bit bigger and the base font size. And so now our theme looks a little bit bigger. And then if I want to make the buttons a little bigger, because let's say these ones are kind of small compared to this, I could do that. And now the buttons are bigger. So that gets us probably 99% of the way there. There's a bunch of other variables we can tweak. And we can see some of those by going into the base Sass file folder. And the main ones we want to be looking at are the color ones. And so this has the main color variables, kind of inverse colors, hover colors, active states, buttons, and a bunch of other little things. Another one I mentioned earlier is sizes. So this will be like the button sizings of panels and toggles. So if I just wanted to tweak the sizes of the theme, I could do that here. And also we have mix-ins, we have a type. So if I just want to set like the text size or the heading size for different things, I can set that. And then if I really want to go into more of the layout stuff, I can drill into the widgets. And so this is all the layout Sass for each widget. So for example, this is what the pop-up looks like by default. I can go into the pop-up Sass file and basically just delete everything, save it, let it compile, reload this, and then the pop-up has absolutely no styling now. It still is going to maintain the theme, but if I wanted to tweak the layout of this, I could totally do that. So it just depends on how much customization you need to do with the CSS, and you got all of it basically here in the theme, so you can tweak whatever you want. So that would be kind of the first approach to customizing, is to tweak a theme. So let's recap the theming. As I pointed out, there's a utility to make theming pretty easy. We covered the structure of the theme, the color, the size, typography, and you saw how you can use overrides to override default values in Sass. So that's the end of Act 1. Act 2, we're going to talk about widget views. And so let's talk a little bit about widgets. Our widgets are composed of views and view models. So the logic is separate from what we present to the user. This allows our widgets to be very reusable. So we can take this view model and create a totally different look for it. Or we can take a view model and create a view in a totally different framework, which is pretty nice. Our widgets are written in TypeScript, which is just type JavaScript. It's the JavaScript of the future now. And what I mean by that is I can use all the ES6 stuff that I want to and all the typed JavaScript, but I can compile it to ES5, which is nice if browsers won't support all that ES6 stuff. And TypeScript, you can use it in pretty much every main IDE, Visual Studio, WebStorm, Sublime, and a ton more, which is nice. Views, they are the presentation of the widget. So they're going to take the view model and its data and its APIs and render it in a specific user interface. So anything presentation related or user interface related is going to go in here. And our widgets extend the Esri Widgets widget base class. So this is our view base class for our widgets. So this is the main thing we'll be working with. It provides a lifecycle and consistency throughout our API so that they're all using the same base class and look the same and work the same. So the lifecycle, we have the constructor. This is what will happen when you initialize the widget, and you'll be able to set up like handles or anything like that there. We also have a post initialize if you need to set something up after it's already been initialized. Most of the time you won't need to do stuff like that. And then the main method we have is render, and this is what is going to return virtual DOM, and this will be called anytime a state changes, so you'll need to re-render the widget. So this is the main workhorse for the widget. And then we have a destroy method, which you can use to clean up any handles and make sure you don't have any memory leaks, stuff like that. So render, it's the main one. We're going to be talking about you define user interface in here. It reacts to state changes. It uses JSX, and it's going to use virtual DOM. So let's look at a sample view, and we'll look at the Compass widget. So this is our API documentation page for the Compass widget. And the first thing you kind of see is what it looks like. And you'll also be able to see links to the widget view. So this is the code for the widget, basically. This is how it'll be presented. So you can take this, download it, customize it, and create a custom Compass widget if you wanted to. You'll also be able to see the Sass for this widget. And you'll have a link to the ViewModel, which is the logic behind the widget itself. So you'll see how to construct and use that. For example, the Compass ViewModel has a few properties. The main ones we're concerned about is orientation. So this will tell the widget which direction it's pointing right now, whether it's pointing north or a different direction. And then there's a state, and this will be telling the widget what state the widget's in. And we'll see that in a second. And then the view that the user provides, which will kind of give the compass orientation direction. So the state by default can be, it's either in compass state, rotation, or it's disabled. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a different view for the compass widget, and we want to make this Stranger Things looking compass. So if I show you this right here, here's the Stranger Things compass. As I rotate it, I get this different rotation here. It'll follow it. And if I click it, it'll reset to north. And here's the default compass out of the box. So it's just this little widget right here. Cool. So the first thing we got to be concerned about with creating our custom compass is the interface of it. So our custom compass is going to take in a view, which can be a map view or scene view. It's going to use the compass view model, and it's going to alias the compass view model reset method. So let's start that. Close this one. All right, so what I've done so far is I've copied that code down from I showed you on our API, and I got rid of a few comments to make it a little more legible because it's a lot right now. What we're going to do is we're going to tweak this and make it look like the custom one I showed in a second. So first thing I want to do, let me compile this. So this is what we're starting with right now. We have our simple little out-of-the-box API compass. What we're going to do is we're going to follow some of these steps and tweak it. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of a couple of properties we don't need. We don't need the icon class property or the label one. Our widgets use this as a nice little helper for other widgets to know what the widget does. But for this demo, we don't need it. The other thing we don't need is the ITN reference. So all of our widgets are localized into a bunch of different languages, and so all these strings for each widget is composed into one file. And for the demo, we're not going to need that. And then we're going to update our render method. So this is the main method we're going to be working with. Right now it has all this stuff in it. We're just going to change it to something really simple to kind of see how it works. So I'm changing the render method to basically return a h1 that says hello world. And it has a couple of styles so that it doesn't just look like black over this dark map. So let's compile that. Reload this. And so now I should see this hello world right there. So cool, I have a widget, but it doesn't do anything. So we need to enhance it. So we're going to update our render method. And what we want to do is make it, instead of a simple h1, let's make it a button. And when this button is clicked, we're going to reset to the north direction. And we're going to change the text to say my compass. So we're going to TypeScript compile again. Go back in here. So now if I rotate this and I click my compass, it's going to go back to north. So some progress there on the widget. What we want to do now is change it to a button that has an image instead of just text. So we have the same button here with the same on-click, but we're going to use an image instead, and this will be our compass needle. So compile that. So kind of the same thing. Now I see this like needle up here. I can click on it and reset. It's getting there. Now what I want to do is add some styling to this. So our widgets by default have an object up here with a bunch of CSS classes listed. And this one's pretty complicated, so we're going to make ours a little simple. We're going to have 3 classes. The first one's going to be the base class. This will go on the root of the widget. We'll have a disabled selector state, and we'll have a class for the image. So what I want to do now is go into the render method and take advantage of the ViewModel a little more. So what I want to do is get the state of the ViewModel, and if the ViewModel state is disabled, I'm going to add a class for the disabled state onto the base of the widget. And I can do that by updating the compass image. So the compass image now has a class of image, and I'm going to return a button with the classes now too. So the only thing that changed was this class. I'm adding the classes of base and the base classes. So then if the state is disabled, the widget's going to show that it's disabled. Compile that. So now you see as it's loading, it has this broken disabled state. Once it's ready, it will show the image. Still isn't rotating, but it will reset. So if I go back to the code, last thing we want to do is take advantage of the ViewModel again. So on the ViewModel, we also have the orientation property, and we're going to use that to rotate the image by adding a transform style to it. So now as the image, as the orientation changes, it's going to rotate this image as well. So let's compile that. So now if I move this, it's got this cool little dial there that moves with it. I should also point out that our ViewModel property here is watching our ViewModel property on the widget is watching the orientation of ViewModel and the state of the ViewModel and causing it to re-render. And that's how it knows when to basically re-render the widget. And so that's our widget right there, a custom widget that we just made. So let's recap that. So what did we learn about widget views? They are the face of the widget. They present the ViewModel logic. So basically you're creating all of your user interface in the view. And the ViewModel separation allows us to integrate into different frameworks and easily recreate a view in a totally different look. And you can get the view on the API documentation where I showed you how to get the TSX file. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to JC, and he's going to take us to Act 3.
Thank you, Matt. So moving on to Act 3, extending a view. So first off, why would you want to extend a view? Well, one of the reasons is since we already provide these widgets, by extending a widget, you already get all the configuration for the properties, the rendering. So if you just need to tweak one small thing, you already have a widget there. So by extending it, you get all the default behavior and allowing us to just provide our custom, like small customization in this case. Another reason is that you can stay in the same ecosystem. So for example, we're using the JavaScript API and TypeScript. So by using extending, I don't need to introduce anything else. So if I were to recreate the view like Matt showed with jQuery or some other UI framework, that's another dependency that you need to bring in. But by extending a view, you can just not worry about dependencies at all. Now, how are we going to do this for this section? We're going to take what we learned from Matt's explanation of how our widget's life cycle works. And by using a few of the out-of-the-box API widgets that we provide. So for our first demo, we're going to be doing the custom compass again. Now, you may be thinking, why are we doing this again? Are we in the upside down? But no, it's not that. It's because we can leverage what we learned from the widget lifecycle and in order to simplify our customization. And it's basically going to recreate the demo that Matt just showed, but it's going to take a different approach. And I'll start off by showing kind of the base of what we're going to be building. This is a boilerplate of what Matt started with. It's just creating a custom compass again. But in this case, we are extending the compass widget from the API. So if I went to my demo here, if I refresh, same thing, we're going to get the out-of-the-box widget compass because we really haven't made any changes to it. So let's go ahead and change that. But since we're extending the widget, we already have all the properties set up, so I don't need to add a property to store, a reference to the ViewModel and wire it up. so that it re-renders. All I can do is just worry about render, overriding it, and giving it my custom UI to replicate the same compass look that Matt achieved. So let's continue, and I have the render method that we'll be setting here. So I'll just copy it over. So what you can see before I do that is all we're doing is what we have here is the same widget, and we're also specifying with TypeScript to use the same properties from the out-of-the-box compass. So now if I bring the render method, all I'm doing is overriding the rendering of the widget. Everything else stays the same. Same behavior, properties, methods, they're all there. So all I need to do now is copy over the CSS that TypeScript is complaining about. I'll bring that object over here. And my IDE is already compiling TypeScript in the background. So once I go back to my application, if I refresh, we'll get the same UI that Matt showed in his demo. Same behavior, because it's powered by the out-of-the-box compass. And all we're doing is changing the way it renders. And it's the same render method that Matt showed. So that's cool and all. It's just tweaking the look of the widget. But what if I wanted to add some sort of like different behavior to the widget to try to give it a different feel? So I thought for this next demo in Stranger Things, the kids like playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I was thinking, what could we bring in to kind of, what would be cool to show off? So I started thinking, one of the dice that they use has like 12 sides in Dungeons and Dragons. So wouldn't it be cool if I had something that ties this dice to one of our widgets? So it got me thinking, the base map gallery has 12 base maps like out of the box. So wouldn't it be cool if I could create a widget that looks like a 12-sided dice and randomly chooses a base map for me? So I thought, okay, let's go ahead and try that. So this is kind of the look that we're going for in the top left. So let's start off with that. Move on to my next demo and my next set of steps. Cool. And before that, I just want to, I'll use Browser Sync, which is a nice NPM package that, oops, maybe not. Okay. I'll just be refreshing because I had an issue there. So this is my starting point for my demo. All I'm doing is similar to our previous example. I'll be extending the base map gallery. So when I refresh the page, which is just bringing the base map gallery, it's bringing the custom base map gallery that I just showed, we get the out-of-the-box behavior for the gallery. So I get the 12 base maps displayed. I can select different ones. The base map changes. Nothing really special there. So let's go and start adding the behavior to kind of simulate that dice, that effect that I was going for. So I'll start off by bringing in a roll method, which is just a method that once you call it, it'll choose a base map at random and select it after a certain delay, because I want to simulate the roll, the dice rolling before it actually sets on a base map. So I'll go ahead and bring that over here. And all it's doing is selecting a random index over here, and then it will set a flag internally to let me know that it's rolling, and then after that, a timeout, it's going to reset that flag and set that base map and tell the widget to re-render. So now if I refresh, we'll see the same widget, but actually, sorry. I need to remember what I call the widget. Sorry, please bear with me. Okay. Okay, well, what I wanted to show is calling the roll method on the widget will randomize selection of the base map, but I can show that later. I'll just skip the step. So what I have right now is the widget and the roll method, right? But nothing's, like you said, there's no way in the UI to actually call it. So let's go ahead and provide our own custom rendering method to give it a custom look and be able to call that roll method that we just added. So all that I'm doing here is creating a node with a few CSS classes and click handler, and it'll also call a method to render the dice. I'll bring that over here. Render dice is just, again, it's going to render a span with some dice-looking content. And whenever the click handler is called, it's going to call the roll method. So all I have to do is bring in that missing piece of CSS. And yeah, I believe that's all I need to do. So now if I refresh, you should see this dice emoji. And when I click it, it's going to reset my base map. Sorry. Oh, I missed one step. It's complaining because when I call the click handler, there's no context bound to it, so it doesn't know where the method is. So I forgot to add that over here. So what I'm doing is the click handler, I'm assigning the context when it's invoked to be the widget instance. So now I should see something. You should see the roll in action. The dice is kind of spinning there. And then when it lands, it changes the base map. So that's cool and all, a dice emoji, but it doesn't really speak Dungeons and Dragons to me. So I'll just go ahead and finish this demo by, I took some time to make it look like the sample I showed earlier. And all I had to do is just play with the CSS, a few custom CSS classes that I'll bring over here. And also modify the render dice method so that it produces some markup that produces something closer to what that dice, to the 12-sided dice. So let me replace the render dice method. And all it's doing, it's creating the 12 sides for that dice, assigning the proper CSS classes. When based on the base map that is selected, it'll add a custom CSS class to it and let it know that that side is the selected one. And each one of the sides is rendering a pentagon inside it. And it's just using SVG over here. And then now if I refresh, I should see something a little bit cooler. And when I click, I can simulate that dice kind of rolling and then randomized. And the sides match the index of the base map from the base map gallery, so you can go ahead and check it out. It should always match the corresponding index. And this is all done through CSS and modifying the render method as I showed, and it's powered by the out-of-the-box base map gallery. So that's pretty cool. All I have to do is worry about the render method, and now it looks like an entirely different widget. Okay, back to the slides. Cool. So just to recap what we showed in this section is by extending a view, the reason why we did it is because we could reuse an existing view or view model the way they're set up. We didn't have to bring any third-party libraries, just using the JavaScript API, writing some TypeScript. And also, we were able to do it by understanding the life cycle of the widgets. So that marks the end of Act 3. Matt, is this the end?
I don't know. It may be the end.
It is the end. So just to recap the whole session, we showed you how to author a theme, how to work with the out-of-the-box themes, how to use a utility that we provide as a GitHub project. You'll see a link to the slides and the demos at the end. So kind of to make it easier for you to customize the look and feel of the theming in general. We showed you how to take code of an existing widget that we provide and create a widget from scratch. And we also showed the power behind understanding how our widgets work, and just by overriding, extending an existing widget, you can provide some minor tweaks and make it look like an entirely different widget. Over here we have some recommended sessions that you might want to check out. The last one is with yours truly, Matt and I, myself, building your own widget if you want to learn how to build a widget from scratch, including the view and the view model. And we have some additional resources here that you can link to from the JavaScript API SDK. And with that, before you leave, please take our survey, let us know how we did, how we can improve, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to be covered more in depth. It really is useful. And with that, we can move on to questions. For example, where's Barbara? We don't know. We haven't seen her. Or where can you find the slides? Right there, if you check that bit.ly link. You have access to the source code, the slides, everything else. Now we can open it for questions. Yes?
Can you talk about the view versus view model split in the context of those two examples?
Yes, so the question was explaining the view and view model, how the demos that we showed, how they relate to the view model. Is that what?
I think we were looking at the view.
Yes, correct.
So what would the view model look like for both of those widgets? And would we want to get in there and customize that?
So, I mean, you could also extend a view model and override, but it's going to be a little bit trickier because at the moment we open source the code for the views only. So you only have access to override methods that are publicly docked, and so that's one difference. Another big difference is that we want to keep the view models, we want to keep the views as simple as possible, and that means offsetting a lot of the logic to the view models to kind of make it easier for you to customize a view. So you don't really need, the idea is not for you to actually implement or override the view model and just focus on the view, because it's going to be the simpler approach.
Yeah, in most cases, people don't really want to change the view model. For example, we have a search widget. The view model of that search widget would go off and fetch the data and tweak it into a format that the widget would understand. And so like that part, usually people don't really want to mess with, and they'll just want to reuse and create a different looking search widget type thing. So that's kind of where the separation occurs. We keep all the logic on one side and all the DOM nodes and styling on the other side, so that you could basically just use one or the other if you wanted to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yes?
What versions of JavaScript use the view model?
Since they were introduced, I believe, since version 4.0, we've had the view models.
4x we've had the view model and view separation. Yep.
Yeah, so if you go to the SDK page, like Matt showed, you have, once you go into a widget, you can, I'll show that right here. So if you go to any of our widgets, in the SDK page, you have a link to the view model. I'll up the text size. You have a link to the view model, the view code, to kind of like better guide you at what to check out. Cool. Yes.
Since widgets are built in API 4.x, is it possible to build a widget that can then be used in web app builder while it's still 3.x?
The question was whether the JavaScript API widgets can be used in Web App Builder.
Yeah.
Technically, yes. I believe what Web App Builder does is wrap the API widgets and provide custom like UI for it. So from that point of view, you can bring it in, but it is a different process to write a widget for Web App Builder. Yeah.
Yeah, because they wrap the widgets and add extra functionality, and they have to communicate with each other and with the app, so there's an extra layer there. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you create separate instances of the same widget that have a little bit different functionality within them?
The question was if you can create different instances of a widget.
Of the same widget, so more than one that vary a little bit between them that are working in the same app.
You mean the same actual class of a widget?
Yes.
Yes, you can create more than one. It's just creating a new instance and then doing whatever you want with it.
Yeah, you could have a widget that shares the same view model
Yeah,
and
that's
be presented
thing.
differently.
Yeah. So another reason behind the view model separation is you can have a view model and you have a view only kind of a presentation kind of view and then an editing kind of view, so you can share the kind of the same business logic, but just one view just renders it so that the user gets displayed the relevant data. The other one would allow you to kind of edit properties of the view model. So that's another example of how view and view models can work together. Cool. Yes.
Yeah, would the patterns be any different if you were trying to create a widget that wasn't in your map, say somewhere else in your application, if you're using a framework and you want it from a different part of the page or app to instantiate the same view model? Is there any problem or anything different you would be doing in that case?
The question was if there's any issue, if the same pattern applies if you want to create a widget outside that doesn't have a map associated to it?
Well, maybe it has a map, but but the widget is not, it's not in one of these typical positions,
Okay.
the upper left or whatever. It's somewhere else on your page in a different div, maybe managed by, React, whatever framework.
Yes. There should be no issue. As long, in terms of what the widget expects, it's just a DOM node. So once you provide one, it'll render to that DOM node, and you can place it wherever you want. It doesn't have to be on top of the map, but some of our widgets do depend on some view or map properties, so you would need that to power them. But in terms of where they're placed, that's up to you.
Yep.
As long as the map was on the same page or in the same context, so you have access to that view, like you said, it could just be any little div that you're building.
Yep.
And you're just applying the view.
Correct. As long as the widget has the proper properties passed to it, it should be fine. Cool. Any other question? Yes.
Thanks. I don't really follow how we could go from customizing a widget to actually putting it into an app that we're developing.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that question?
So if I was making a page with a map in it, where do I put the output of a widget to load it into that?
Oh, okay. So the question was, how do you bring one of these customized widgets into my app? Okay. So that's a good question. We didn't really show that, but in short, I can show the structure of this application that I have here. So basically, this is my custom. I'll try to bump up the. I don't think it works for.
There you go.
I was trying to show the navigation. So, sorry if the font is too small there. But basically what I have here is this is my custom widget, and it's compiling to a JavaScript file, right? So I have an index page here that's pulling in my application. If I go to the application code, all it's doing is requiring that module, sorry, let me bump that up. All it's doing is requiring that class that got compiled, so it's just a matter of referencing it into your app. So you would customize that, and the output of the customized widget, you pull it into your app. Cool. Any more questions? Yeah.
Talking about themes, are all or any of the default themes created for clients? Is that listed out in the documentation?
You mean in terms of colors and sizes and yes, they should be. Yeah.
Okay, so all of them should be?
Yes. We make efforts to make all of our widgets, themes, and UX UI be as accessible as possible.
Yeah, when they're designed, they're using the axe toolbar, I think, and it kind of gives a contrast minimum and stuff like that.
Cool. Any more questions? All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.